You guys have seemed to really like my videos about conference realignment or new schools that are moving up to different conferences or different levels of play. Today we're going to take a little bit more of a microscopic approach and focus on the state of Utah. Recently, it was announced that 2 of the Utah schools are now moving to a new conference. Both Utah Tech and Southern Utah will now join the Big Sky, which is one of the best FCS football conferences, and this honestly is really cool. There won't be many opportunities for me to ever spotlight these 2 programs, so we're going to talk about these 2 programs, how they got to this point, what it means for the conference, and how this overall could affect the FCS. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about these Utah schools that are on the move. So let's first do some background of Utah Tech. Utah Tech is actually quite new. They're based in St. George, Utah, which is down in southwest Utah, and is actually closer to Las Vegas than it is to Salt Lake City. They started the program as the Dixie State Trailblazers in 2006 after being a junior college for a handful of years. They then transitioned to being a 4-year institution, and they started as a D2 school in the Great Northwest Athletic Conference, which had schools like Western Oregon and Western Washington, and would later have Simon Fraser. They would then go from the Great Northwest to the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference in 2017, and then started their transition to the FCS level back in 2020. Once they made their way into the FCS, they joined the brand new Western Athletic Conference, or the WAC, alongside a bunch of other schools from Texas, like Sam Houston State and Lamar. Plus, Southern Utah was there. But they initially struggled at the FCS level, going 1-10 in 2021, 4-7 in 2022, and 2-9 in 2023. When the WAC merged with the ASUN to create the United Athletic Conference, they would fire their old head coach. This guy was named Paul Peterson, and that happened in 2024 because he'd only gone 17-32 with the team as their head man, and then they went with Lance Anderson as their head man for the 2024 campaign. He wasn't able to do much better as the team went 1-11 last year. Dixie State changed their name to Utah Tech in 2022 to ease confusion about who they are. They're located in an area of Utah that is sometimes referred to as Utah's Dixie, but since they're located in the Rockies and not the South, they decided to make the name change to give more of a unique identity. This new identity didn't really do much to make things better, as they've been near the bottom of the conference ever since they joined the FCS from D2, and they have an overall record of 62-140, or about 31%. About the most interesting thing about Utah Tech is that they've actually had some pretty interesting transfers over the past few years. Former Wisconsin and Iowa quarterback Deacon Hill transferred there for 2024, and he threw for just 400 yards. They also had Quali Conley on their team in 2022, and he ran for over 1,000 yards before transferring over to Arizona. But the Trailblazers are in a weird part of Utah and don't really have much success at any level of football. They currently play in Greater Zion Stadium, which seats over 10,000, and that's actually pretty good for FCS, but they hardly ever fill it. They weren't the only Utah-based team in the United Athletic Conference, though, because they were joined by the Southern Utah Thunderbirds. Southern Utah has a longer and more in-depth history than Utah Tech. Like the Trailblazers, Southern Utah started their football life as a JUCO. The Thunderbirds first started playing their 4-year college football back in 1963 as an NAIA team, before creating the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference back in 1968. They left the conference in 1985 to join the NCAA Division II Conference, which is known as the Western Football Conference. The WFC had teams like Portland State, Cal Poly, and Sac State. They ended up going 41-34 from 1986 to 1992, and were pretty competitive but not a huge threat. They'd start another conference in 1993, this time creating the FCS American West Conference alongside schools like UC Davis, Cal Poly, Cal Northridge, and Sacramento State. They would struggle there, and the conference would collapse after just a couple of years because the other teams left for the Big West or the Big Sky. Their next conference would be the Great West Conference in 2004, which had North Dakota State and South Dakota State in it. Kinda cool. When they moved to the Big Sky in 2012, it was to be with more like-minded institutions. Southern Utah is located in the southern portion of the state in Cedar City, which is also in southwest Utah, and is 3.5 hours away from Salt Lake. They joined other Rocky Mountain schools like Montana, Montana State, and Northern Colorado, as well as NDSU and Sacramento State again. They won their first conference championship back in 2015, and then won it again in 2017. They'd stay in the Big Sky until 2022, when they joined the new WAC. This eventually turned into the United Athletic Conference, and they currently play in an 8.5 thousand capacity stadium, which is known as the Eccles Coliseum. Southern Utah is a bit more successful than Utah Tech, with an overall record of 241, 303, and 10, which is about 44%. They have 4 total conference championship titles, and they've made the FCS playoffs only 3 times, losing their first game all 3 opportunities. Unlike Utah Tech though, Southern Utah's roster is mostly homegrown, with a lot of their impact players being guys who signed with the Thunderbirds and stuck around instead of being implants from other teams. But Southern Utah wasn't doing well as members of the United Athletic Conference, and when they left the WAC in 2021, they were coming off of a 1-10 season. They went 5-6 in the WAC in 2022, then 6-5 in 2023, before going 7-5 in 2024. That's improvement, but even at 7-5, the Thunderbirds finished just 4th in the conference behind Abilene Christian, Tarleton State, and Eastern Kentucky. They are currently led by Delane Fitzgerald, who's been their head coach since 2022, and he's gone 18-16, so he's sort of just average. He was a D3 and D2 head coach, so he knows what he's doing at Southern Utah, but still needs time to build the program up into what they could become. So why are these teams moving and how did this happen? Well, the main reason why they're leaving now is because the WAC experiment is failing for the second and probably final time. They were only back as a football conference for a season or so before a lot of their programs moved back to places like the Southland Conference, so they were forced to join with the A-Sun. That meant that both of these teams in Utah were playing conference games in places like Alabama and Kentucky. That's a huge gap for FCS teams to be covering, and travel wasn't very feasible. On top of that, teams that were stable in the conference like Sam Houston moved up to the FBS, and it left the United Athletic Conference on the verge of collapse. Both these teams are just taking a lifeboat out. The Big Sky just lost Sacramento State to the FCS Independents after the Hornets tried and failed to get themselves into the FBS and needed a few Western teams to fill in the blank. Big Sky's commissioner said, quote, "The addition of rising rival athletic departments from these 2 universities, located within our geographical footprint in the United States, reinforced the long-term stability and success of our league. Amid a rapidly evolving national landscape that each day seemingly pulls college sports further from its true mission, this move underscores our commitment to a strong and sustainable future at the top of the FCS and across several key sports. Both of these programs bring institutional alignment that will enhance the Big Sky's tradition as a national leader that continually aspires to elevate the experience for our teams." Goodness gracious, some of this PR talk is absolutely ridiculous. As no offense, nobody is really that excited about Utah Tech. I mean, the team won 1 game last year. But again, I just love how these guys talk. The addition brings the Big Sky from danger territory at 9 to now 11, with other schools in states like Idaho, Montana, Washington, Oregon, California, Arizona, and Colorado, and then they'll join Weber State in the state of Utah. While it is a step back for Southern Utah, it's a huge step forward for Utah Tech, joining the biggest FCS conference in the West. Their AD said, quote, "Utah Tech University is thrilled to join the Big Sky. Competing in the Big Sky allows us to keep and build meaningful regional rivalries and elevate the overall student-athlete experience. We can't wait to welcome the Big Sky teams to Trailblazer Nation." Keeping in good geographical region was a huge selling point for Southern Utah too, as their AD said, quote, "We are excited to be rejoining the Big Sky. This move sets a strong foundation for the future of our athletics by expanding our visibility and creating meaningful opportunities for growth. We're looking forward to renewing friendly in-state rivalries with Weber State and Utah Tech, and are eager to strengthen our connection to all Big Sky universities. FCS schools don't have the same budget that FBS ones do, so being in a conference that stretches from Utah to Georgia was really hard on both teams. Now their furthest travel will be to Washington, and they'll have teams close by to play. So what does this mean for the Big Sky? Even though neither of these schools are all that great at football, the Big Sky solidified its place in the FCS after Sacramento State's departure. In Southern Utah's case, they got a team back, but Utah Tech is seen as a school that could grow into being a contender if they just get the right coach. There's a lot of good football talent in the state of Utah, so stretching the conference's footprint back down to the southern part of the state is a good way to increase a grip over a lot of the Rocky Mountains and make sure that more talented players from there decide to stay in the FCS, and in turn, in conference. What it mostly ends up is an addition by subtraction. Poaching Utah Tech and Southern Utah from the UAC is pretty much the killing blow for the WAC, ensuring that the Big Sky remains essentially an FCS power in the West, and it also makes it less likely that the Missouri Valley Football Conference could convince teams like Montana or Idaho to jump ship and join them. It's a move focused on long-term stability in a division that's seen a lot of turnover and change. So how will each of these schools do? Well, despite both of these teams being added to the Big Sky, I don't think they'll do all that well in a conference with Idaho, UC Davis, and Montana State. Last year in 2024, 5 of the conference's 11 teams ended the season ranked, with 4 of those 5 being ranked in the top 10. Montana State even made the national title game before losing to North Dakota State. Neither of these two teams are very good historically, but I'm actually going to go out on a limb and make a prediction that I think Southern Utah will be a pretty competitive member of the conference immediately, and that Utah Tech could grow into something in the next 10 years. Utah Tech has done a lot of work into improving their facilities and pushing to get better, and even though it hasn't shown up on the field yet, they're giving themselves opportunities that other FCS teams just don't have. My closing thought is, while this is awful for Sacramento State, as the door back into the Big Sky is pretty much slammed shut behind them, this is good news for Southern Utah and even better news for Utah Tech. It's a great opportunity for those two schools to grow and focus on building their programs with teams in their geographical region. I think all this realignment stuff has gotten really confusing, so it's sort of a breath of fresh air to see two teams join a conference that actually makes sense. Yeah, who knows how they will do, but I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Utah Tech and Southern Utah will probably never get on the channel again, so it's kind of cool to spotlight them, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to leave a like, let me know your thoughts on conference realignment and the new Big Sky, and before you go, don't forget to also check out all my videos on the end screen, including my new guide to the new Pac-12. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.